I'd like to call the meeting of the Bellingham Public Works Committee to order. Joining me on the committee is Michael Lilliquist and Jack Weiss. We have one item before us today, and it's a request for the City Council's review of the Public Works Director's denial of a sewer service to residential property located in the urban growth area at 1183 Mount Baker Highway.
Thank you, Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. In the packet, the summary statement talks about the Public Works Department's denial of sewer service outside the city limits at a property that is located within the UGA. I'm going to turn it over to Brent, and he'll walk the council through this particular request and why we denied it, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ted.
Okay, for the record, Brent Baldwin, Public Works Department. So what I put up on the screen here is just a general location map. The property is on Mount Baker Highway, just past McLeod Road as you're going out of town. You can see Squalicum High School right next to it. It's a little bit hard to see, but this portion of property is actually in the UGA. The UGA line comes along here, down, and then follows McLeod over. So it's just outside the city limits. A couple of you may remember last year, the year before, there was a couple of failed septic systems on existing buildings within this same little block here that we did approve, but those were occupied residences that had failed septic systems. So we received an application in for sewer service to this lot. I just passed out the actual application to you, didn't get included in the packet, and with that application I also added a street view of the property itself. So the existing property has a burnt out house on the property. It had a water service, so we have another provision in code that allows for them to get water service to, as long as it's the same size as what it was previous. It never had a sewer hookup. There's water and sewer both in Mount Baker Highway. So the existing house or the previous house had a septic system. The applicant's information states that the septic system is now failed. Obviously, I don't know how long ago the house burned down. So staff reviewed the request to the applicable codes that are contained in the memo that's in your packet. There's very limited discretion within the code from a administrative standpoint as far as approval or denial, so therefore the request was denied. And to go further with the memo, the next step in that process is if the applicant requests to be reviewed in front of council, council has a little more discretion on how or if properties can be served outside the city limits within the UGA. Ted, did you want to add?
No, I think that's pretty much it. The code is, as Brent mentioned, that section of the code that says that we would only allow service in the case of, when it said necessary to protect public health and safety. That's a very narrow interpretation, and Alan can speak to this in more detail, but it's right out of GMA, Growth Management Act, and the courts have interpreted it very narrowly in terms of what constitutes public health and safety. From a staff perspective and in consultation with legal, I just didn't believe that this particular request met that very narrow requirement in terms of proving the need to protect public health and safety. And as Brent said, the code lays out the process of then coming to the council upon denial of their request. I will say one thing, that we've been telling folks, if you're outside the city limits within the UGA, that the best way to get utility service is to get annexed into the city limits. Council may recall several years ago there was an annexation request, the Dewey Valley request, that council ultimately did not approve. Some of the property owners within that original Dewey Valley annexation area are once again pursuing annexation with a redrawn boundary. If that does move forward, it would be reasonable that this particular area would be included within that annexation proposal. So I just wanted to let the council aware of that.
I'll add too that the applicants are here today if you want to hear from them.
Okay. Jack?
Yeah, your last point, Ted, I think when we were dealing with that annexation, it seemed like there wasn't as much opposition to the Mount Baker part of it, the Mount Baker Highway part of it, as it was to Dewey Valley.
Right.
And unfortunately, the annexation proposal was combined. And I think, unfortunately, they were told pretty much to try and combine them at the time. That was really, I think, really unfortunate for the overall application. When I did a little research on this over the weekend and just looking at this, and is the water connection that is being requested to pretty much service one house, or is it, I mean, because when I was doing stuff, I went on to Zillow, and on Zillow, it's advertising this parcel as a parcel that would be set up for 20 units of housing.
No, according to the letter that was submitted from the applicants, their intent is to build a single-family house there. And the way that the other section of code that allows for reestablishing the water, so as long as the water is inactive but wasn't removed, it can be established again, but no larger than what was there before.
Yeah, that was an amendment that the council made a year or two ago. We used to have the abandoned services provision that if your service was abandoned for a period of 6 years or longer, you couldn't reestablish water connection outside the city limits. The council amended that and said you could, but you would have to limit the sewer service to the same size or smaller meter than what you had before. And the idea was that you wouldn't be able to subdivide or build additional units.
I just don't want to get us into a Governor's Point situation where we get like a 3/4-inch line servicing 160 houses. But that's what I'm hearing, is that would not happen at all, right?
Well, again, the application was denied by staff, and we're recommending that denial stands, but the information that was submitted from the applicants does state that they intend to build a single-family house there.
But on the denial, the way it stands now, the applicants could hook up to water.
Yes.
That's correct.
But what they're looking for is the ability to hook up to sewer.
Correct.
And I'm assuming since there's a failed septic system, or they're saying failed septic system, that if that was an existing house and it failed, that would meet the criteria for the health and safety issue, but since the house hasn't been built, it doesn't. Is that?
Yeah,
correct in that?
that's exactly right. In fact, like I said to start off with, there's two other houses in this triangle area that had that exact
Right.
situation where people were living there. It failed. They were notified by the county that it was a failed system, so it was a health-related issue. This is a vacant lot other than the burned-out house. So from a staff perspective, we didn't feel like we had the discretion within the code to say, yeah, this is a health-related issue.
Yeah. Gene?
On the third page of their letter, there's a report saying it would be highly unlikely that they would get a septic tank. So they really don't have many options other than waiting for an annexation. Or we grant the request. I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that play a factor in it, the fact that they can't get a septic tank in there? Maybe that's a little technical. Maybe Alan can answer that. I don't know.
That would be Alan Mariner, Deputy City Attorney. That would be where council would have the discretion. The one thing that I do want to point out, and Ted comment on it, is that we anticipate a petition for annexation that would include this area. And so we have some other property owners in that area that are wanting water and sewer, and they're moving forward. We expect to get the petition, and it would include that triangular portion of the property. But council would have the discretion to say that you've got to make that decision whether it's health, safety warrants the approval of a sewer extension.
Jack?
I first was looking at this until I read the letter that was just handed out to us. I was somewhat sympathetic to the notion of it, thinking that that the owner of the property owners of the property had owned it for a long time, and maybe this gets to the situation, is that, if it had been in the family and the house had burnt down, and, that would have probably been something that would have been more pulling towards me to want to try and vote to establish the sewer service. But when I read the letter, I mean, they've had the property for 3 months, and to me, it seems like it's a due diligence whenever you're buying property to understand whether or not you have utilities in order to go and build. And this is no different, Gene, I think, than to go and, have, further out on Mount Baker Highway a few more miles, we still have a connection, utility connections out there, but we would never, they're not even in the UGA in those places, but it would be sort of the same type of thing. At this point, I'm kind of leaning towards the fact that the annexation should really be fast-tracked and try and move that forward so that, that these people can get the utilities that they need, but at the same time go through the process where we're doing this in not on a one-off basis, but on a more comprehensive basis.
Yeah, for me, this is one of these really tough ones. I have met with the applicants, and they're a very nice family, and I would love to see them be able to do that, but we created a set of rules, and we're looking at kind of that application of those rules in other places as well. And it's a hard one to say, well, we want to set this aside for, because I do feel like you do, Jack. This is, if it was you own it and your place burnt down, and then I can see the replacement of it as one issue, but the other, it does make it harder. But with the annexation hopefully coming before us soon, that could open up the way for the family to be able to still. Yes, Michael.
Is there somebody here who can talk about that annexation petition? I mean, it's not submitted yet. We don't know when it will come. I don't want us to break our own rules. And if there's a legal way through a petition for annexation, which for other reasons, citywide reasons, is probably an appropriate action to take, I want to know how realistic that possibility is within the next year or two or whatever.
Yeah, that's a very real possibility. We've met with the other property owners, I'll just leave them unnamed, but, and their attorney, Moshe Quinn, the planner who handles annexations, is involved, and really, we've met and provided them information. We're just waiting on the petition. So if it's going to happen, I anticipate there'll be a petition filed sometime this year with a much reduced boundary that excludes the Dewey Valley. So it'll be boundaries where most, if not all, of the property owners want to be annexed.
That just sounds like the appropriate way to go.
Jack.
In your review of that, does the boundaries that would be proposed on that, would they meet would they be a legitimate type of boundary as far as meeting the goals of GMA?
They'd be logical boundaries, appropriate boundaries for the city to annex and to expand.
Okay.
So, committee, what's the will?
I just want to ask
Okay.
one more question. Terry and I and Jack went through the Dewey Valley annexation. The only thing they didn't bring with them to the meeting was pitchforks. It was that contentious. So, there's never a guarantee when you bring an annexation forward. We've gone through several before, so I just hope it's drawn to where we don't get that opposition that we got before and have the whole thing go down in flames, then they end up with nothing. So you know more about it than
And the intent is for the property owners to come forward with a petition where if not everybody, I think everybody will be on board, and it would be a much smaller area than what council previously considered.
Okay.
Okay, Jack?
I'll make a motion to deny the application or the appeal.
Okay. So we have a motion before us to deny the applications. Any other further comments? All those in favor of recommending the denial of this to the full council, answer aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will recommend that tonight, and for the applicants, you know, this annexation should be coming forward, and hopefully that will solve it for you. Thank you. Okay. That's the last for this committee. The last item, Jack.
Well, based on the fact that the mayor isn't here, I was just wanting to see under our committee, because it probably falls more into that, if there's a way of being able to get a report on the response of the fireworks program that was rolled out over the last few days.
Yes.
Either for tonight or sometime soon.
Well, I'll check and see if they can pull it together for tonight, or if
Okay.
there's an anecdotal report. I think you might want
Okay.
something a little more specific, but I think anecdotally from talking to officers. It's a secret. Anecdotally, for officers that were on the fireworks patrols, they reported that there were less calls and shorter periods when people were actually lighting off fireworks. Obviously, it wasn't, there were still fireworks being let off, but they thought that the actual lighting of fireworks was down. But I can see if there's any specific, if there's like how many calls and that kind of thing, over what period of time, that's what they'd have.
And we were getting a flurry of emails over the weekend, at least I was, I don't know about the rest of the council, but, and I'm just interested in just seeing what the response from the police and fire departments were. If there's a way of being able, if it's not tonight, at least at our next meeting.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next committee isn't till 2:25, but I would like to do approval of minutes and old and new business at this time before we break. So we have two sets of minutes for approval. That'd be June 9th and June 23rd. Jack?
Move both sets of minutes.
I'll abstain from, could we do them separately? 'Cause
Yeah,
I wasn't
okay,
on the
I'll move
23rd,
the
so
June
9th.
9th?
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion before us to approve the minutes for June 9th. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Minutes are approved. Now, Jack?
Move June 23rd.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and second before us to approve the minutes for June 23rd. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions?
I'll abstain.
One abstain, one abstention. Motion passes 5-0-1.
I mean, I watched it all
Right.
on my computer, I don't know why.
Yeah.
How come we can't do Skype?
Okay, yeah. So do we have any old and new business?
We have, Jack, you and I have a PEG meeting with the mayor and the staff on what day?
Tomorrow, I believe.
Tomorrow at 2 o'clock?
Oh,
is that
no,
right?
I'm sorry, no, Wednesday.
Wednesday at 2 o'clock, okay.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, Roxanne.
I guess this is quite germane to me, but I wanted to bring it up for the benefit of anybody who's watching at home, especially just to be aware that we have our marijuana retailers that are going to be opening. So let's get ready for a lot of traffic that will be going into those neighborhoods just to create awareness, to let people know, in case you didn't know where those retailers were going. There's an article in the Bellingham Herald today about where they will be. And so I just didn't want any of the businesses or the community members to be caught off guard by the probably initial frenzy that we will experience as these places open tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Then we will be adjourned until 2:25 when the finance and personnel will meet.